people's love will grow cold, but the one who endures to the end, he will be saved. Then they will deliver you to tribulation. Now, I'm going to read this verse 9 again. Then they will deliver you to tribulation and will kill you, and you will be hated by all nations because of my name. The key word there is a transitional word. It's the first word. It's then. Okay? Anytime you're reading the Bible, you want to look for certain transition words so you know something has changed. In this case, everything up to verse 9 is him telling you, because he says, these are the birth pangs. It's the beginning. These are the things, it's not yet, but these are the things. So he lays it out very plainly. These are the signs you're looking for. Verse 9 starts, then. So you have a transition word. What's then? Then means this, now you're moving on to the part that follows after the birth pangs. So now you're past the birth pangs and you're actually into the birthing process. Okay? They will deliver you to tribulation. Well, what is then transitioning to? What's actually is right there. They will deliver you to tribulation. So from verse 9 on, it is imperative to realize and understand that from verse 9 on, it is speaking about that which will happen in the 7-year tribulation period. Because we had before the end, the birth pangs, and now we have then you have tribulation. The tribulation, or as we also have it in the Old Testament, the time of Jacob's trouble. And that's where we move on from there. So everything you read here will be tribulation events. As the church, these are events we will not see. But these are things that will happen. Yes. Just the 12. Well, I mean, it doesn't say the 12. You have to remember, Jesus had many disciples. He had his 12 disciples, his primary, or his apostles, but he had, Mary Magdalene was one of his disciples. He had many. We don't know how many he actually had. But when people say his disciples, it generally refers to the 12. But in this case, we don't know if it was just the 12 or all of the ones that happened to be near the Mount of Olives at that particular time. Well, I don't know that he had that many, and we really can't know how many he had. I would just assume that because it is not being specific about the 12, that it would be just any of those who were following him at that time, and that they were the only ones who heard it, and it was not a public teaching. It was just to those close to him. What were you saying? Yeah. I mean, I would assume just whoever happened to be there, because it isn't specific about how many there were. We only know that it was them and not public, as far as who heard it. So during the tribulation, they will deliver you to tribulation, which means you're going to have a really bad day, and will kill you, and you will be hated by all nations because of my name. So we know during the tribulation period that at some point during it, anybody who claims belief in God will be shunned, will be killed, like the Jews, because we know they're going to be persecuted and they believe in God. So for his name's sake, people will die. They'll be killed, murdered. And it's going to be, Christians will be martyred. There's going to be martyrdom like has never been seen before on this planet. At that time, many will follow. Sir?
He was talking 2,000 years ago to the disciples that were in front of him.
Yes.
And he's saying, you will be. But the tribulation is yet to come.
Correct. Well, see, he had to say it that way because otherwise he could.
Talking to you and I as well.
Yes, and that's people kind of get mixed up there, and because we're going to kind of hit a part later here where he's saying he's going to say like the verses, this generation will not pass away. He's not talking to the disciples. It's what he's telling them, but he's telling them it the way he is because he needs it to be recorded that way. Now, did the disciples understand that they will not see this time frame? Probably not, but then again, maybe they did. They had quite a bit of insight, It's really tough to say. And I can't speak for what they did or did not understand, And the tribulation, either way, for them, it could easily have been fulfilled because the disciples were killed. They were martyred. They suffered tribulation like, oh my Lord. Yeah. I mean, so they were delivered to tribulation. They were killed for his name. So it applied to them, but this is also an end-time prophecy. It's saying what will happen. And I think that's part of why it's phrased and worded the way it is. You will be delivered to tribulation. Then you'll be delivered to tribulation. So after these birth pangs, and they probably saw everything up to verse 9. They probably saw all these things. These aren't new things. There were famines back then. There were earthquakes back then. Who was recording earthquakes back then? Almost nobody. The Bible. That's probably about it, you know. So it kind of depends. It depends on their mindset, what they had experienced up to that point and what they were going to experience afterwards. But I think it's safe to say that pretty much it applied to them, but for our purposes, it applies to us now. So, as then it says, all that at that time many will fall away, will betray one another, hate one another. False prophets will arise, will mislead many. Good Lord, I mean, I could, I'm not going to, but I could name some pastors, some men who claim to be pastors, who are absolutely false prophets. They're wolves in sheep's clothing. Oh yeah, absolutely. There's this one pastor who, no, I'd never heard of him until on Bobby Carey's show. He actually plays a clip of this guy, and he's a pastor of a church, and he just goes on this rant. He basically says that if Muslims or whatever, or if you come into our church and mess with us, our men will cut your throats, kill your women and children, go to your ancestors and pee on their graves. I mean, I'm like, this man's a pastor of what? This is hatred. Pure, simple hatred. Kinda, yeah. And what does he say? I'm a Christian. Talking like that, the heck you are. We don't serve the same God. You serve a God of hatred and anger and vengeance. Now, vengeance is God's, but it is His to take, not ours. And it's just, this man was angry, and I don't know what spawned him to say what he said, but to claim to be a man of faith and then to speak that way it's abhorrent in every sense of the word. Because lawlessness is increased, most people's love will grow cold, but the one who endures to the end, he will be saved. So we know that end is a 7-year time frame, based on our study of Daniel. But because lawlessness is increased, I mean, we're experiencing lawlessness now. Now, it's all under the guise of laws, but they're directly violating God's laws, hand over fist. I mean, just the most recent one is the gay marriage one. I mean, it's like there's no condoning it. There's not. I don't hold anything against them. You know, I don't go around saying that, condemning them to hell. I mean, that's not my place. I can't tell anybody they're going to hell. I can tell them if they sin without repentance, they'll go to hell. That's not the same as me. If you go into somebody and saying, you are going to hell, I will not do that to anybody. It's not my place. I don't know that. That requires omniscience in order to make that statement, and I don't have it. I'm so far from perfect. I'm working on it, but I'm slow progress. Slow going. Verse 14, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. Okay, this is a key verse here. What time period are we in? Tribulation. Yes, in Matthew 24, verse 14 he's talking about the tribulation, right? When will this verse happen? During the tribulation. Is this our commission? Yes. Our commission is to spread the gospel to all who will hear, right? I've heard people say that Christ will not return until the whole world has heard the gospel. Wrong. No. There's someone somewhere on this planet who has not heard it. And people will say, until every ear has heard, Christ cannot return. No. The world hearing the gospel of Jesus Christ is not a prerequisite for His return. not before the rapture and not before the tribulation. It is only a stipulation before his second coming at the end of the tribulation period. That's the only thing it stipulates. It's his second coming at the end of the tribulation. And here's how we know this. Revelation, we've covered this in our study. Revelation covers the entire tribulation period. Okay? Chapter 14, verses 6 through 7. And I saw another angel flying in mid-heaven, having an eternal gospel to preach to those who live on the earth, and to every nation and tribe and tongue and people. And he said with a loud voice, Fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him who has made the heaven and the earth and sea and springs of water. So there will be an angel in the second heaven, mid-heaven, which is in the upper atmosphere sky area. And he will proclaim the gospel in every tongue, in every language, to every nation. Every. That one angel will accomplish what we do not have the ability to. That angel will ensure that everyone has had the choice and heard it. Have the option. So when people say Christ can't come back until the whole world hears, no. There is no verse that says that. This is the verse they take and they make it say what they want it to say. Because we want to feel important, right? We want to feel like God's using us, right? Oh, I'm an evangelist for God. I'm important. I have work to do for Him. And yes, that might be true. But if you get an ego about it, you're going to end up losing yourself in the process. Okay?
What are those scriptures? I'm sorry. You said them and I didn't understand.
What they said or where they were? Revelation 14, verse 6 through 7.
14, 6 through 7?
Yes, sir. And that one is directly tied to Matthew 24:14. Those two go together. Because Revelation explains what the meaning of Matthew 24:14 is. It's just the more detailed version of it. Okay, we move on to verse 15. Therefore, Matthew 24:15. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. I'm going to hold there for a moment. The abomination of desolation. For those who were in the Revelation class, that was when the Antichrist enters the newly rebuilt temple in Jerusalem, and he will make a sacrifice, which we're assuming would be a pig. It's just a guess. It would make sense if it was. But he will perform some kind of sacrifice that will desecrate the altar. He will stand in the temple and proclaim to be God. That's what will happen. And that is what the Bible calls the abomination of desolation. Also, I say desecration, but the correct term is abomination of desolation. And that marks the halfway point of the tribulation period. So we have from verse 9 to verse 15 is kind of like our first half, and now we're going on to the second half. And this is basically a divider. Picking up at verse 16 to 21, then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. Whoever's on the housetop must not go down to get things out of the air out that are in his house. Whoever is in the field must not turn back to get his cloak. But woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing babies in those days. But pray that your flight not be in the winter or on a Sabbath. For then there will be a great tribulation, such as has not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever will. So we have them fleeing to the mountain, which we know what happens after the desecration happens, and the Antichrist proclaims. We have the outpouring of the curses on the people who take the mark and worship the idol of the beast. They'll receive malignant sores, probably, I don't know what they're called off the top of my head. But they're going to be under a lot of pain, a lot of supernatural persecution. And what's going to happen is the people of Israel are going to flee to the mountain. They're going to flee to Basra, which is the sheep pen, located in Jordan. And it'll be their wilderness, and they will be protected for the remainder of 3.5 years. At the end of the 3.5 is when we have our return. When they have the woes, and basically when it happens, it's going to happen fast. It's going to happen quick, and those Jews are going to have to flee. Now, Tim LaHaye and Jerry Jenkins, when they wrote their Left Behind books, they have this really kind of neat analogy that there was one of the 144,000 was the one to lead them